Hello, and welcome to today's Quick Plays video on using a fold equity calculator. There are so many different poker tools available, but this is one tool that I use quite often. In this video, I'll show you what a fold equity calculator is, how it's useful, and show you how to use it with some examples. Let's first understand what fold equity is. Fold equity is essentially what we gain the time our opponent folds. If we take a spot where we shove a draw, we can win the pot one of two ways. Either our opponent calls and we hit our draw sometimes, or our opponent folds. The more often our opponent folds against our aggression, the more times we win the pot uncontested, which is a very profitable thing when bluffing or semi-bluffing. A fold equity calculator then looks at how often our opponent needs to fold in order for aggressive actions to be plus EV. In this video, we're going to look at the fold equity calculator found on fpppro.com, but there are many like it on the internet. This fold equity calculator needs 4 pieces of information before it can work. First is the effective stack, or how much we're shoving. 2 is your estimated equity when villain calls your shove. 3 is the current pot size, and 4 is how big of a bet you're facing, if applicable. Let's look at an example to see how this all works. In this hand, it folds around, the button opens for 3, and we 3-bet from the small blind with ace-king suited to 11. Just the button calls, and we see a heads-up flop of queen-jack 4. Hero decides to put the button all in for $20 with just overs and a gut shot. We can use the fold equity calculator to prove the validity of this shove. We know we're making an effective shove of $20, so we can fill that in. We know the pot size before we shove is $23, so we can fill that in. And we're not facing any bets, so we can plug in $0. The last bit of information that we need is the estimated equity, which we can figure out using a free program like Equilab. If you don't know how to use Equilab, please watch our other Quick Plays video showing you how to use the software. Remember, we're calculating the equity we expect to have when our shove gets called. If we thought he would call our preflop 3-bet with 9s, but folded against our shove, we don't include it in this calculation. For simplicity's sake, let's say the button has and would call our shove with jacks plus, ace-queen, and ace-jack. If we click evaluate, we see that we have 27% equity when called. We can simply then plug that in, click calculate, and get the output that we need. The fold equity calculator is telling us that we need villain to fold at least 12% of the time. What this means is this: if villain folds less than 12% of the time, we're making a negative EV shove. If villain folds exactly 12% of the time, this is a break-even shove, and if villain folds more than 12% of the time, this is a plus EV shove. And of course, the more he folds, the more and more profitable this shove is. We can also use a fold equity calculator to proof a hand like this. In this hand, middle position opens, we 3-bet from the cutoff with king 10 suited, and middle position calls. The flop comes queen 8-6, giving us a flush draw. We continuation bet for 14, and he check raises up to 32. We can prove the value of a semi-bluff shove just by plugging in some simple numbers. Our shove in this situation would be for $105 more. The pot before we shove is $69.5, and we're facing a bet of 16, since his $32 check raise is $16 more than our $14 continuation bet. If we assume he would only check raise and call our shove with sets and kings plus, we can plug that into Equilab, evaluate it, and notice that we have 32% equity, which we can promptly plug in. Click calculate, and we get the output that we need. What we see is that we need 23% of folds for this to be break even. At this point you may be wondering, but how can I guess that villain will actually fold 23% of the time? That's a fair question, and this is the way that I visualize it. We thought his stack off range was sets and kings plus. This is 18 combos. If we times 18 by 1.23, or increase it by 23%, which was the necessary number of folds that we need, then we see 22 combos. So if his check raise range has at least 22 combinations of hands, and he'd stack off the same 18 combos, we can expect enough folds. Knowing how to turn a raw percentage into real combinations of hands is an advanced skill that can really help your game. In this hand, we shove and our opponent calls with pocket eights. We knew this was a possibility, and him calling our shove doesn't necessarily mean that we made a mistake. This was factored into the original valuation of the shove when we considered our equity the times villain did in fact call. So long as we thought villain would fold more than 23% of the time once we shoved, the play was plus EV. The times he does call, at least we have some equity, and we can always run good and improve some percentage of the time. This is how we use a fold equity calculator. We plug in some simple numbers, estimate our equity against the range villain would call or shove with, and make sure villain would actually fold often enough. This is all work you want to do away from the tables, that it becomes ingrained and you begin to understand that as I risk X amount of money with Y amount of equity, I need Z number of folds. The more you practice with it and analyze previously played hands, the better your semi-bluffing game will be. Same as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, good luck and happy grinding.